We start with Morgan Freeman via voiceover, waffling on about how there's a bunch of aliens creepily spying on humans and being jealous of our planet for some reason. After the opening titles, we meet totally average New York crane operator Ray Ferrier, played here by that Thomas Cruise fella who loves doing crazy stunts and running for his life in a bunch of movies. Anyway, his pregnant ex-wife asks him to look after their daughter Rachel and moody son Robbie, while she sods off to Boston to visit her parents, and tells him he better not mess up such a simple job for once in his pathetic existence. A little later, in the local news report talks about how Ukraine is currently under attack and in total devastation. And before you can say, I guess nothing really changes, Ray tries to bond with his moody son what hates his guts by playing a game of catch. But said moody son what hates his guts deliberately misses the ball, and hilariously makes his dopey dad smash his own window. No! After this, Father of the Year leaves the moody teen and his 10-year-old sister alone for hours whilst he goes upstairs for a kip. He wakes up to find Robbie gone along with his motor, and he just can't believe he's been carjacked by his own son what hates windows and also his guts. And after storming out to find and totally bollock him, he instead gets distracted by a giant fuck-off storm in the sky. And going out back for a closer look, he reckons that this shit ain't quite natural, given the wind is blowing toward the storm and there not being any thunder and stuff. And after running inside like a bunch of cucks, they hide under the kitchen table, also like cucks after lightning keeps striking the same place multiple times and also seems to be purple for some reason. Eventually, he musters the courage to go outside and soon meets up with his naughty son Robbie, who's only gone and lost his car given EMP seems to have gone off and fried everyone's electronics. Venturing further out, he passes his mechanic mate who's trying to fix up the cars and soon comes across a giant anus looking thing in the street. And no, I don't mean Piers Morgan just out for his morning jog. And the floor soon starts rumbling and rupturing like something's trying to burst out. And before you can say, this'll end well, a sinkhole opens up and a giant alien tripod thing emerges.
Damn!
And after taking a minute to wonder if maybe the giant alien tripod is maybe friendly they all start getting deaded by shiny lethal laser beams.
No way!
And it looks like it's curtains for totally average New York crane operator Thomas Cruise. But naturally, he does what he does best and starts running for his life, as various extras and disposable nameless red shirts get vaporised all around him, as all their clothes and underpants, and presumably actual red shirts now, floats down also all around him. But luckily, Thomas Cruise has plot armour up the kazoo, and soon makes it back home with barely even a scratch on him.
Nice.
Now so traumatised he's unable to explain to his kids why exactly he's caked in human DNA, he soon shakes it off and gets them all the heck out of Dodge after somehow surviving an extraterrestrial extermination event. And after totally nicking that car what his mechanical mate has spent all afternoon fixing up, he speeds off down the highway when their naughty Martians come back for round 2 and also vaporise said mechanic mate, and then tries to explain to a panicking 10-year-old and a bemused teen how a bunch of illegal aliens are trying to blow them all up and destroy the American way of life. And before he can say, I told you them ISIS fellas would be back and this is exactly why we need to secure the southern border already, Ray tells little Rachel to stop screaming about wanting her pregnant mum, because that's where they're going, so shut up about it already. But dopey Thomas Cruise totally forgot that said pregnant mum has fucked off to Boston for the weekend, so naturally tries to calm his kids down by trying to do something that a normal parent would do, like making a simple sandwich and shit. But he can't even do that right, and it somehow ends up stuck to the window because reasons. Nah, just joking. It's because he had a total meltdown and lobbed it out of frustration after they both said that they don't want his stinking sarnies. Feeling like a total failure after seeing his old town get wiped out, breaking his own window and now also brutalising innocent wheat-based snacks, he tells the kids to hunker down for the night in their mum's basement, which is something I've been doing for the past 20 years to be fair, given how extortionate rent currently is and how I can't get on the bloody housing ladder for love nor money. But anyway, the purple lightning soon comes back as total carnage is unleashed outside. And after suffering a mini panic attack and asking his son what the fuck they do now, he manages to grab a pistol before Robbie drags them all into a lower sub-basement boiler room. The next morning, and Ray heads upstairs to find out what the heck happened. but just finds the living room trashed and a giant flaming jet engine just chilling in the corner. And before he can say, well, I know I was pretty out of it, but I don't think that was there last night, he ends up scrambling over the wreckage of a huge plane crash. And totally average New York crane operator Ray Ferrier just thanks his lucky stars that he's being played by Thomas Cruise and thus has an endless amount of plot armour, given he somehow survived an entire jumbo jet falling on their heads in the night. Though, to be fair, this guy's just so relatable. Because his ex-wife leaves town for a few days, and within hours, her neat and tidy house is totally trashed and his whole life is up in flames. Anyway, he meets some local scavengers who tells them that the alien fellas have some sort of force field around them, and so shooting them is more useless than trying to remind Joe Biden who the current president is, and thus the military are totally impotent against them. The scavenger lady then theorises that the machines were buried underground millennia ago, and these Martian fuckers totally ride down the purple lightning to pilot the ships. Some shit. So, heading on over to Boston to meet up with their knocked up mama, Thomas Cruise tells his moody son to stop calling him Ray and start calling him Daddy again. Because it's super awkward, bro, and people might get the wrong impression and stuff. And after later stopping for a pee break, little Rachel soon spots a floater. Steady. And then sees a bunch of them, as bloated dead bodies start floating downstream like it's the River Thames or something. And her dad soon whips her away before she can scream, or even take the much needed leak that she went there for in the first place. Though she's probably already leaked in her pants now.
Bruh.
Elsewhere, Robbie tries to flag down a passing military convoy, but they don't want no stinking emo teen or Thomas Cruise looky-likey fella, so they simply drive past them, leading to the father and son soon having a Barney by the side of the road. Because Robbie thinks that his dad just wants to find their mum so he can dump them on her and sod off again like always. And to be fair, he can't really argue with that, because I'd certainly want to dump these disrespectful arseholes as soon as possible if I was him. Anyway, that evening, they arrive at the Hudson Ferry docks and drive into the middle of a mob, and who naturally beg them for a ride, given they're travelling in the only working motor for friggin' miles. And also, he's totally tipping it down, bro. But suddenly, they don't take no for an answer, and start swarming them like a fucking zombie horde and soon drag their asses out of the car. And after letting himself and his family get passed around worse than a drugged up porn star, he finally remembers that he has a shooter, and soon tells them all to get back and leave them the frig alone already. Until a random bloke does a super sneaky sneak attack and whips out his own gat. And before you can say, in a country infamous for its love of guns, why are there only two fuckers out here with shooters during a bona fide alien invasion, he gets mugged off and carjacked for the second time in one day. Now making their way toward the Hudson Ferry on foot, they're almost yeeted by a runaway train, before linking up with an old acquaintance called Cheryl and her daughter Laura. But little Rachel is soon distracted by a swarm of fleeing birds, in a worse omen than that time I tripped over a broken mirror whilst walking under a ladder, and then landed flat bang on a black cat. And sure enough, the tripod fellas appear within a matter of moments and soon head toward them, causing a mass panic to get everyone on the boat already. And although there's clearly plenty of room left on said boat, the panicking military tell them it's full so they can get the heck out of Dodge already. But Ray just says, don't you know who I am? I'm Thomas Cruise for fuck's sake. So you better let us aboard or else I'll jump on your couch for a few hours and totally convert you to Scientology and shit. But unfortunately, they're having none of it. So Ray and the fam soon take advantage of a nearby distraction to slip on through, though accidentally leaving behind his old acquaintance Cheryl and her daughter Laura, and hilariously just stands there watching gormlessly as his mate is left to swivel and also be swarmed by the mob, and just says,
"Sucks to be you."
After they set sail though, they don't really get very far before a giant whirlpool opens up and totally capsizes them all. And before you can say, that's what you get for standing around gormlessly and saying sucks to be you whilst your old acquaintance Cheryl and her daughter Laura are left to swivel, they just watch as some poor peeps are saved from the ocean, but not in a good way. Once ashore and trying to evade the ongoing massacre, they head through a small forest as it begins to rain underpants again.
Okay.
The gang then stumble across a valiant yet futile military attack on the invulnerable invaders, as a vengeful Robbie wants to get stuck in and join them already, and presumably just get away from his dad for a few minutes. But poor Ray has to let him go after Rachel almost gets herself abducted by a pair of passing randos, and soon finds shelter with a local nutter in a small storm cellar. Apparently, this guy is called Ogilvy, a paranoid honky who seems to have suffered a mental breakdown, living all alone under his floorboards for days. Anyway, he reckons these fuckers are in the midst of an extermination procedure and will just keep on coming, because it's more like a war between gods and maggots now. And before he can say, "You better watch who you're calling a maggot, gimp boy," Ray realises he was brought here because this mental bloke wants to surprise them with a super sneaky underground sneak attack of some sort. But suddenly, all his nutty shouting totally attracts the attention of an alien worm probe. And after spending a ludicrously long portion of the script trying to evade it, given these writers have literally no other ideas how to pad out the runtime, they eventually hide behind a small mirror, and then spend even more time hiding from the real aliens, who have now come down out of their machines to explore a flooded human basement for some reason. And after witnessing the tripods harvesting human blood and tissue to fertilise their weird-ass alien vegetation, Ogilvy finally snaps and runs off to tear some shit up. So naturally, totally average New York crane operator Thomas Cruise has no choice but to yeet him off screen, given his mad shouting was about to totally doom them all. But unfortunately, they're soon spotted by a probe and forced to flee outside, where little Rachel is scooped up by a passing tripod and soon deposited into his testicles. Or some shit. And the bloke what loves running for his life soon runs off for his life, before grabbing some nearby military grenades and lobbing them at their shields to get his attention, so that he can get himself scooped up and then reunite with his dopey 10-year-old. Which he totally does, but also unfortunately, he gets himself sucked off, but not in a good way.
Shame.
But given he managed to grab a few more grenades before he was taken, he successfully blows all their guts out and makes his escape by falling onto a small tree. The next morning, the alien vegetation seems to be withering away and dying, as the military tell him that the tripods are acting all weird and shit, before he points out to the oblivious army chief that there's some pretty birds chilling on top of its head. And before he can say, "Sorry mate, but I ain't brought my camera out today," he just says, "No, you fucking crayon sniffer. That totally means that they ain't got a force field no more, so stop pissing about and start blowing it to Kingdom Come already." Which they also totally do, as it then crashes through an innocent building with piss-poor CGI effects. And after the squaddies check and confirm that the Martians are properly deaded, Ray and his one remaining kid finally arrives in Boston, and soon reunites with his pregnant ex-wife and elderly in-laws, and also his moody son, Robbie, who somehow survived an alien war despite running headfirst into a savage battle completely unarmed, because reasons. And although totally average New York crane operator Thomas Cruise is pretty happy that he technically managed to do his one job and keep his kids alive and in one piece for one weekend, he's totally dreading telling his ex about what's happened to her gaff after he spent just one night in it. And we end with narrator Morgan Freeman telling us via exposition that the aliens totally died, and not because of how tough our anti-tank missiles were, but instead because they were vulnerable to the countless microbes that inhabit the Earth, and essentially hadn't had their booster shots before visiting a foreign planet and basically died of a foreign cold. Kind of like my nan when she got COVID after visiting Corfu a few years back. And that's it. That's the movie. Though my favourite part was when they talked about Ukraine being on fire near the start. Because this must be that predictive programming thing what I keep hearing about on the chans and shit. And now I'm just super paranoid about what else this film is warning me about. Like a plane's going to randomly fall out of the sky and onto my head during the night? Or are they implying that there's a bunch of illegal aliens hiding underneath the streets and waiting to burst out and do a bunch of bad things at any moment? Because we all know how much them Hamas lot love scurrying about underground and coming up with naughty schemes in tunnels and stuff. But anyway, that's the plot and that's your lot. Consider ringing that bell thing so you don't miss any future recaps. Tell me if you like this flick in the comments if you have time, and I'll vaporise you in the next one.